Aloha and happy World Ocean Day. Welcome to this presentation of the release of the PacIOOS West Maui wave run-up forecast. We definitely thank you all for joining us. We know everybody is having virtual meeting fatigue, as are we. So we appreciate all your continuing dedication to this project and your interest in learning more. And most all of you are involved in West Maui in some way, so thank you. For those of you who aren't new to this effort, maybe some of you have been with us on this journey and sending in photos along the way. It might be hard to believe that we first reached out to you about this time in 2019. And the project team has been working since well before that time to bring this to where it is now, bring it to life. And we're very excited to be able to share the culmination of everyone's work. Today, we want to show you the forecast tool and tell you what we've learned about West Maui and answer questions. So we will keep moving along here. Our plan for the meeting is this, some virtual housekeeping in a moment. We'll follow that by a brief introduction of the project team. We'll have 4 polling questions to get a snapshot of who has joined us today and your particular interests. So as part of those polling questions, we'll have an opportunity to pre-select the topics or the questions that are of most interest to you for later on in the Q&A. That will be followed by a brief background on the project and why West Maui is a very special case. We'll do a live demo of the forecast tool after that, which is really what we're here for today. Then we'll touch base on how to get involved or stay involved if you have already been. We do still need photos. And we'll wrap up with a summary and next steps before we do the technical questions and Q&A. So we know that everyone is well versed in the virtual world by now, but just to make sure, please keep your microphone muted. When you entered Zoom, you were automatically muted to minimize background noise. So we like to ask you to stay that way while we present, but you are welcome to type in questions in the chat as you think of them, and we'll circle back to those later on in the Q&A. And then also in the Q&A, you're welcome to unmute yourself and feel free to interact with us. Please do that. Another thing to remember is when we're sharing slides like we are right now, you can change your screen view. I think it's up in the upper right-hand corner. There's an option to select gallery view or speaker view. You can play around with that just to make the slides as big as possible on the screen so you can see everything. If you have any technical difficulties as we go along, send a message in the chat. Somebody will try to address it. A reminder that we're recording the meeting. And while we will keep the meeting to an hour to respect your time, we will be here to stay on longer. The team will, if you have questions that haven't been answered in the Q&A session. And then finally, just help us spread the word about this tool because it's meant for our community to help you with awareness and decisions. Okay, so I'm going to unshare the screen for this moment in time and turn it over to Fiona to help us through the introductions.
Great, thank you, Tara. So before we do a few polls to get to know you, we wanted to introduce ourselves. There's a whole team of staff that has worked behind the scenes on developing this tool. So we will briefly go around to introduce the project team so you have some actual faces to the names. Melissa, do you want to get started?
Sure. Thanks, Fiona and Tara. Aloha kako. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm Melissa Iwamoto, and I'm the director of PacIOOS and the principal investigator for this project. So basically, I just make sure that this wonderful team has the resources they need to do what they do. Thanks, and welcome again.
Hi, I'm Doug Luther. I'm on the faculty of the University of Hawaii, and I lead the technical team that's put together the modeling.
I'm Martin Giles. I'm a research scientist here at UH, working on this project under Doug and with the whole team. And I mostly do coordination, sampling, recovering instruments, diving, modeling, guidance, whatever.
Hi, my name is Asaf Azuri. I'm also a research scientist in Doug Luchter's group. I focus on some data analysis as well as modeling for this project.
Hi, I'm Camila Tonyakini. I'm a graduate student and my advisor is Dr. Luther, studying physical oceanography, and I've been studying the wave energy in West Maui. And here in the background, you can see one of the deployments we did in the PD Bay. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tara Owens. You've already heard me talking. I am a coastal geologist with the University of Hawaii Sea Grant Program, and I serve as one of the co-investigators on this project and a link to the team and the Maui community. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Tara. My name is Fiona Langenberger. I'm the Communications and Program Coordinator for PacIOOS, and for this project, I have helped with the development of the web pages and also helped with the stakeholder and community engagement. Alrighty, so this was our team, and now we want to do some polls to get to know you. So we have 4 questions, and the system is really easy. It's within Zoom, so you don't have to open another browser window or go somewhere else. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to launch the first poll, and it should show up in your window. And so the first question is, tell us a little bit about yourself, and you can choose multiple answers. So you're going to see the window while you're working on it, and when you submit, it disappears, and then I'll be sharing the results shortly after. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to read through. All right, I'm going to give it a few more moments before I'm going to end the poll and share it out with everyone. I think share results. All right, so we're heavily biased with the scientists, but I think this is misleading because it's our team. So I think we have a really great spread, like a wide variety, homeowner, residents, business, some nonprofit representation, also agencies, federal and state, and also some that just want to learn more about it. So that's great. Okay, so let's move on to the next poll, which is whether you have heard about the West Maui wave run-up forecast. And again, you can choose multiple answers in this question. Seeing the results coming in. Okay, I think it's like starting to slow down. I give it a few more seconds. Get your vote in. All right, I'm gonna end the poll and share it out so you can see it. So a lot of you have been receiving the email notices, so that's great to hear. Some of you also have heard through friends or colleagues, and some of you are new to it, which is also great. We really want to make sure we're reaching a wide audience, and so welcome to those who are new to the wave run-up forecast. I hope you're gonna learn a lot, and again, there's a long Q&A session at the end, so you can ask lots of questions. All right, and our third question, which I'm going to share right now, we want to know whether there's a specific area in West Maui that is of most interest to you or that you're most concerned about in terms of the impacts. So we've divided this into either all of West Maui or the northern region, the mid-north, the mid-south, and the southern region. So you can see whether there's any particular region of interest. We're just curious to know about that. All right, I'm going to give it a few more seconds. If you want to get your vote in, you can just submit it now. And I'm going to close it out now and share the results. So a very clear result here that most of you are interested in all of West Maui. However, there's a couple of folks that have a particular region in mind. So thanks for those answers. And then now we're going to go to our last question. And this is what Tara had mentioned earlier. We want to know whether there are any topics of particular interest to you. And the reason why we're asking is we want to tailor our Q&A session later on to see if there's specific questions that you're interested in. And if there are some that stand out, we're gonna go first with those and you know, respond to those as the first questions and answers, but we can address all of them later on. So we have lots of time in the Q&A session, and we can also stay on longer if needed past the hour mark. So we'll see what's happening here. There's still a bunch of votes coming in, so I'll give it a few more seconds. All righty, I think it's slowing down, so I'm going to wrap it up here and share the results with you. Ooh, we also have a fairly clear winner there. Why is West Maui impacted more than other areas in Hawaii? And there's also a lot of interest in the question on whether the 12 regions are impacted differently. So we can make a mental note for our team that we're going to address those two questions first. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Tara.
Okay, I was making notes of our priorities there, but I am going to go back to screen share mode. And as all of you are very well aware, West Maui is one of the hardest hit areas on Maui with respect to wave and erosion impacts that are expanding and worsening in the face of sea level rise. We do have a lot of very good information about past trends and now future projections of these types of impacts. But West Maui is an area where we knew we needed more tailored information, site-specific information to help with preparedness and planning. So that was the driver of this project, and also the driver for the grant funding we got from NOAA that enabled this team to get involved. So we'll just do a really quick virtual tour here. I'll click through some of the photos of wave impacts, and these were contributions from all of you in the West Maui community throughout the life of this project. And the waves and the impacts you see in these photos are from typical seasonal high waves, not from storms or hurricanes or things like that. So along with the magnifying effects of sea level rise and long-term erosion, these seasonal waves are substantially changing the shape and conditions of our shorelines. So I want to emphasize that it's these types of seasonal waves that we set out to model and predict. So here you're looking at the S-turns area around Pohaku Park, where the waves run up the beach and sometimes even into the road during high wave events. On the right-hand side, you're looking at Napili Bay during the height of the seasonal erosion and after south swell events. Now on the left-hand side, we're looking at Olowalu during a king tide event. And you can see how when we have king tides and combined with a little bit of wave action, those waves begin to eat into the land-based sediments and affect water quality. This is on the right-hand side, a picture of the public beach walkway in Ka'anapali, which is sometimes overwashed or undermined by high wave events. On the left-hand side, you can see basically high wave flooding at the Wahikuli area as the waves overtop the existing rock armoring there. On the right-hand side, this is Keone Nui Bay. This was from just this past October, so during an early season winter high swell event, and you obviously can see how the buildings there are impacted during these high wave events. Another look at Ka'anapali on the left-hand side here. Again, waves reaching all the way up the shoreline and eating into the walkway area. And another look at Napili Bay during high waves in the summer erosion. And again, you can see how sometimes when the waves eat into the land-based sediment, you can have water quality impacts. Okay, so with this project, and you may recall this if you came to previous meetings, we set out to develop a locally specific model for waves in West Maui in order to predict or forecast site-specific wave impacts. So we're doing that by first developing a 6-day forecast to increase awareness and preparedness. So if we're expecting a big event with anticipated impacts, you might use this tool after Fiona shows you how it can be used as information, maybe to take safety measures or make decisions. Maybe you would avoid traveling on Honoapi'ilani Highway during a high wave event, or maybe you avoid going to certain beaches with your family. Or if you manage a resort property, you can post warning signs for your guests who wouldn't otherwise know what the conditions might be. Or a resort or a landowner might want to relocate chairs and umbrellas away from the shoreline, or move boats or kayaks, all the things that we're used to in Hawaii. And then with this forecast now running, we're also going to continue to build our collective knowledge of how waves affect specific places in West Maui. And this is going to help us inform longer term planning and responses. And we're going to come back to that in just a few minutes. Before we get into the demo and next steps, the demo of how the tool works, I want to give you just a little background on what Wave Run-Up is. And you may remember this from previous meetings if you were with us. But real quickly, the sea level, the water level of the ocean is changing constantly. You all know that. Sea level rise itself occurs over periods of years and leads to permanently elevated water levels. On top of that, there are also water level anomalies that can lead to higher than normal water levels, sometimes temporarily. And these anomalies can be caused by ocean-wide conditions like related to El Nino periods, or they can be these rotating bodies or eddies, bodies of water that are warm and they cause sea level to rise temporarily. On top of that, we have tidal, the day-to-day tidal variability, so it's constantly changing water levels through the tidal cycles. In addition to those factors, we also have several wave-driven components that influence the total wave run-up. So this includes our regular seasonal swell waves we've already mentioned. And on top of that, we have what's called infragravity waves, which are just really long period waves that can be hard to see, but you might be able to see if you, for example, set up a camera and did time-lapse photography. And sometimes this is commonly referred to as the surf beat. And so ultimately all that adds up to run-up. And run-up is measured vertically, usually in reference to like a mean sea level or a low water level, and it measures how high the waves reach. Now, in addition to the water level and the wave components, the bathymetry or the seafloor topography and the depths play an important role in the magnitude of the wave run-up. And West Maui is majorly affected by the refraction of wave energy, or the bending and the focusing of wave energy into the shoreline area. So looking at West Maui's bathymetry here on the left-hand side, you can see shallower areas, maybe like 300 feet between Maui and Lanai in the yellow, green, and the blue colors. And then the deeper areas between Maui and Molokai, this is the Pailolo channel, right, in purple. And so if we have a wave event, let's say here on the right-hand side, the waves are approaching from the north or the northeast or the east even, they wrap into that deep purple channel and they slow down over the shallow sections while they continue to move fast in the deeper water. And this causes the waves to bend and orient themselves toward the coastline, which creates these fingers of wave energy that you see here in the image. Same thing happens when waves are coming in from the south. They bend and refract based on bathymetry, and they focus wave energy in these fingers. As a result, there's high variability of impacts along the West Maui shoreline. And so in other words, the impacts are not going to be the same everywhere throughout West Maui at any given time. And that's important. And that's one of the reasons for tailoring this information in West Maui. So with this basic information about waves in our minds, I'm going to turn it over to Fiona, and she's going to guide us through a live demo of the forecast tool and how you can use it to anticipate wave impacts.
All right, thanks, Tara. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, so we're starting on the PacIOOS website, and you can find us at pacios.hawaii.edu or pacios.org. Both work, and we'll bring you to this website. And so up here in the super menu, you can see waves, currents, and shoreline impacts. And under shoreline impacts, we have one category here on the left side, wave run-up forecast. So we're going to go to West Maui, and that's going to get us right to the overview map. So here you can see the entire region at a glance. There are a total of 12 different regions spanning from Papala'ua Wayside Park in the south up to Lipoa Point in the north. And due to the complexity and differences along the shoreline that Tara just mentioned, we established these 12 unique regions, and they're based on similarities in wave dynamics, the bathymetry, beach features and shapes, and also the infrastructure. So you can hover over all these different regions with your mouse, and you can get the latest forecast right there. So this is a really nice way to just quickly get an idea of like what's going on along the West Maui shoreline without going any deeper. So this is just a quick overview. And before I'm going to dive into one of these forecasts, I do want to point out the tabs up here on the top. So if we go to the About tab, you can read more about the purpose of the forecast. There's also a section about what wave run-up is and how to read the forecast. We have a little video, which is 3 minutes, that basically walks you through the forecast the same way what I'm doing right now. So there's a lot of information here, also on how to get involved, about our project team, the funding. So this is like a brief overview. If you're interested in more details, really more about the model and the forecast methodology, we do have a details tab that really goes much more into the technical details. Some of them we're going to talk about in the Q&A, but again, like if you're interested, there is a lot of content here. I'm not going to walk through all of it. Then last but not least, we do have an acknowledgements tab up here where we're talking about all the great support that we've received from the community and also from organizations in West Maui to make this forecast happen. So we will talk a little bit more about your involvement and your future involvement after this live demo. So we want to go back to the regions, and I'm going to select Napili region, and I'm just going to click on it, and this will lead me to the Napili regions page. So just as a FYI, like there's these breadcrumbs up here. So if you ever want to go back to the overview page with all the regions, you can just click on West Maui in this upper section here, and it will lead you back. So that's a very easy way to get back. All right, so here we are in the forecast tab. Not surprisingly, you will find the actual forecast. And so there's multiple parts in this plot. So I'm going to walk you through this plot. Just to get a better understanding of what it all means. So on the left side, the dark blue solid line is the actual observed sea level. So this includes tidal cycles as well as additional sea level influences caused by strong currents, the surf beat, or larger wind systems that are far away. I should make a quick note that the forecast is not valid when the storm system or a hurricane is within the Hawaiian Islands, so when it's really close by. But we can talk about that in more detail in the Q&A session. On the right side here in the light blue is the forecasted sea level height. So this is like the solid lines are the actual and the forecasted sea level heights. The reference for this forecast is the average of the lowest tides, which is also called mean lower low water. This is the dark, like the black line down here. So when we go to the dashed lines, those are the calculated wave run-up heights for the last 3 days. So that's the dark blue, and the upcoming 6 days, which is the light blue. As a reminder, the wave run-up describes the vertical reach of seawater onto the shoreline. So in other words, how high can waves reach up the shoreline? And this can be a combination of high sea levels and different components of an incoming swell that lead to high wave run-up. And to better understand what the forecasted wave run-up heights mean, so what you can see here on the left side, what does 4 or 6 or 8 feet mean? We have established these thresholds here on the right side, ABC, for all 12 regions. So the letter A represents light impacts, the letter B represents hazardous impacts, and the letter C represents critical impacts. Once the dashed line, so the wave run-up forecast reaches this red shaded area, it is very likely that impacts will occur somewhere within the region. So those categories of light, hazardous, and critical impacts are based on photo documentation from previous run-up events. You can find those up here in the run-up examples tab, along with associated photo documentation. So let's take a look here at the run-up thresholds. So these are specific thresholds for Napili. I'm just gonna, like as an example, the light impact for Napili region means beach activities could be disrupted as occasional waves may sweep the beach slopes or intermittently reach vegetation or shoreline hardening structures. So again, these thresholds are different for all the 12 regions, and we do recommend to familiarize yourself with these threshold definitions if you're interested in a specific area. So when you look at these examples down here, and these are photo examples, for example, light impact in Napili Bay could look something like this event, but it's just an example. So it doesn't mean that, you know, this is exactly what the light impact may look like the next time, but it's just an indicator to get a better understanding of roughly what we mean by light impact. I'm going to show you in contrast one for critical impact. So this is just a photo example, an event where that we defined as a critical event, and that would be represented in the plot in the C area. So if we go back to the forecast tab, it is like similar to the, you know, just your regular weather forecast. This forecast, the wave run-up forecast, also gets more accurate the closer you get to the actual date. So especially if there's run-up predicted, you might want to check back on a regular basis on how the forecast evolves over time, just to make sure you have the latest, greatest. And before we move on, I do want to just briefly show you the archive tab up here, because I think that's also important to note, which provides you access to all the previous plots that we have available. So if you're interested in a previous event from a previous month, you can just click through it, or you can have it run through it. So this is like an additional resource if you're interested to look back what happened in the past. In addition, we also have a map tab up here where you can just check back on what the boundaries are of this specific region. And there's also a description that goes along with the region right underneath. All right, and so with that, with the Napili region forecasts, I'm turning it back over to Tara.
Okay, I'm going to share screen one more time, and we're almost getting to the Q&A portion, if you can just hang with us a little bit longer. This is important because this is how you can get involved or stay involved if you already have been. Again, I mentioned earlier, we do still need some photos. So we can't always be in West Maui when these impacts are occurring. But because of the photos submitted by all of you and your neighbors, we were able to calibrate the model and establish those thresholds for impacts and relate the forecast to visual examples of the impacts, as you saw in Fiona's demo. So we very much appreciate that, and there's more to be done. So this continues to be a work in progress as we continue to observe and learn. Therefore, we really humbly ask for your continuation of to take pictures, and you submit those. It's here on the screen at pacios.org/WM for West Maui. No need to ever wait for a formal request. You can send photos anytime. And if you go to that website, whether it's on your browser, on your computer, on your phone, it would look something like this. It's really simple interface. You just click add photo and it'll prompt you through the rest. There are a few areas where we would greatly benefit photos, or benefit from more photos, I should say. And as you might imagine, these are some of the areas where you might not normally think to stop and take a photo. So places like just south of Lahaina town, just north of Olowalu town, and I think we have some gaps at like the Hyatt Honoko'o Park area. So if you're in the forecast tool and you're looking and you see that we don't have photos representing those thresholds for B or C, then it means we don't have photo documentation for that calibration. And one last thing, once you submit a photo, it goes into the database, and that database is available for you and everyone to use going forward in the future. So if you go to pacios.org/WMM, that's for West Maui map, you get to this interface here, and it shows you where the photos have been taken and how many. And if you continue zooming into the coastline, you can zoom in and see exactly where those photos were taken. You can click on it, see the photo of the impact, and you can even download these photos in full resolution to use for your own purposes. So really cool stuff. Just to wrap it all up with a quick summary of where we've been on this journey so far, there was, again, this need for tailored information about wave impacts in West Maui. So this involved a grant application and thankfully an award from NOAA to engage this team of researchers from UH and PacIOOS. And what we've done is develop this localized wave model, which has then been calibrated by on-the-ground photos of wave impacts collected by all of you, and then turned into a forecast of upcoming wave impacts. But the work is definitely not done. We have more to do. Our next step for this project is to look further into the future. So, of course, changing water levels with sea level rise mean that there's going to be a change in how much wave energy reaches our shoreline in the future. And climate models predict increasing wave energy. So to assist with long-term planning, to prepare for this, the team is using the model now to generate different wave conditions, like we'll have small wave scenarios, annual maximum wave scenarios, and extreme wave scenarios under different sea level rise scenarios. So it looks like we're going to be looking at sea level rise scenarios of 1, 2, 3, and 6 feet. We'll probably find a way to depict inland ocean flooding with those scenarios. So the example you see here on the right-hand side shows an extreme swell event with sea level rise of 3 feet. So this is not just like how high the waves will get, as you saw in the forecast tool, but maybe what will be flooded. In addition to this inundation, we can also derive other products like hydrodynamic force and energy flux. And these are products that would hopefully be useful to planners and engineers and state and county folks that are making capital improvement decisions. We anticipate to have these products by maybe the September timeframe. So more to come. And I'm going to wrap up my part with a big mahalo. Obviously, you've seen that the development of this forecast wouldn't have been possible at all without the support from the Maui community. We have some of our community scientists who submitted photos listed here. We also received tremendous support from local businesses and organizations when we were doing our field operations, which made those field operations possible. So again, mahalo. And I'm going to turn it over to Melissa to guide us through the Q&A part. And I'm going to stop sharing.
All right, thanks Tara, and thanks Fiona for the live demo. So we're gonna use the poll results first, and then I'll open it up to anyone that wants to unmute or type a question in the chat, please, if you have other questions that weren't in the poll. So Martin, we're gonna start with you. Why is West Maui impacted more than other areas in Hawaii? And Tara, this is slide 15.
Yeah, great. Thanks for everyone coming. And this is a very complicated question, but I'm going to try and make it as simple as possible and just kind of add some context for it. So one of the contexts we have to have is kind of how coastlines form, and they form on geological timescales, right? So beach berms form and reefs grow and things happen on a much longer than a human-centric timescale. So if we go back 10,000 years ago in the West Maui or in the Maui group, the sea level would have been about a little more than 100 feet below what it is today, and you could basically walk to Lanai. So about 5,000 years ago, the sea level was rising rapidly at that time. So about 5,000 years ago, the sea level started to stabilize. So all the kind of the morphologic features of the coastline you see now are of that time scale, that kind of age. And it's funny because our sand, our parrotfish poop sand, has a kind of in residence time scale of that too when you date it. So what's happened in the West Maui group over that recent kind of ancient to modern history time period in terms of human scale is that group is well protected from exterior wave forcing, and it has a lot of fringing reefs. So that combination means that the interior of the Lahaina roads, or the basin there, has been a very well protected area in the whole archipelago. In fact, the most well protected area. And that led to these coastlines that we have. The problem is that if you take a fringing reef system and you start to add a little bit of seawater on it, you end up allowing for more short period waves reaching the shoreline. So irregardless of how big of a swell we really get, if we add sea level to a fringing reef system, we allow more energy to reach our actual coast, our shoreline. And what's been happening now in West Maui over the last, couple of decades is we've reached that kind of threshold where the anomalous sea levels, the long-term sea level rise, and those things now provide more and more opportunities for events to impact and eat away at our shoreline. So that's why it's one of the most at-risk coastlines in all of Hawaii, because of that protection and the kind of interesting way that protection is now being removed.
Thanks, Martin. Sorry, I've got a little tantrum going on in the other room. The next question at the top of the poll was, how are the 12 regions impacted differently? Doug, want to take this one?
Sure. Tara already covered very nicely the impact of bathymetry, the fact that the waves coming into West Maui, either from the north or the south, have a tendency to curve towards the shallower areas. And then you get quite a bit of distinctive fingering of or amplification and minimization of the wave energy at the coastline, as these two figures on the right show. There are other factors as well. Can we go to the next slide, please? So the season makes a big difference. Which season you're in, that'll alter whether you're going to be in an impactful area or not. The nearshore geology, as Martin was just going through, is extremely important. Do you have a coral or rock reef in front of you, in front of your coastline? Is it seasonally narrowed or broadened at beach protection? Do you have an alluvial backshore? So if the sea level is high enough and the waves are starting to hit the sand, but then they go over the sand and start hitting where the vegetation is, the alluvial deposits back there are usually finer sediments, and once they get suspended and moved offshore, they usually don't come back, whereas many of these beaches, the sand just gets moved around during the various seasons and then will come back up on the beach in one season, even if it went away previous season. And then of course the other issue is human engineering, and that all of these factors went into defining these particular regions that have, in each region, there are general similarities. There are a lot of differences, as I'm sure you all are well aware, but there are general similarities of what the shoreline looks like, what the infrastructure looks like, what the offshore reef system looks like, and so forth. And that's it.
Thanks, Doug. All right, the third question, and after I ask this one, I'll turn back to the audience and see if anyone wants to ask any additional questions. What kind of model are we using, Asaf?
All right, so we actually are using more than one model, and it's a series of models that start from global scale, go down to regional scale and local scale. And there are two wind models, and you can see them at the top left. The first one is the Global Forecast System, GFS, which is at a 50-kilometer resolution. The other one, it's a Wove, Weather Research and Forecasting, which is at 5-kilometer resolution. And then there's a few wave models that start also from global, regional to local scale. So these are WaveWatch, Swan. And the last one on the bottom right, it's the Boussines Ocean and Surf Zone, BOSZ, which is the one that I particularly work with. It's a very high resolution. As you can see, it's 8 meters in the cross shore by 12 meters in the longshore. Now these domains are covering the actual coastline of West Maui and extend, I think, about 10 kilometers in a longshore up to 7 or 8 kilometers in the cross shore. Now, I will focus on that last model. Maybe you can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So BOSZ, it's a wave model that simulates the wave dynamics over these two domains, like I mentioned, and it is from the model that precedes it. It's the SWAN model, which provides input on a grid of 200 meters, and it provides the input to BOSZ along its boundaries, the offshore boundaries, where we have what we call a wave maker. So it produces waves near those boundaries, and we have 42 virtual gauges along these boundaries where they serve as input to BOSZ, and then it allows it to create the waves that keep propagating towards the coast of West Maui. Now, this model resolves a very important physics. It resolves refraction, diffraction, reflection, and it even allows for waves to interact between them and with the bathymetry, and we can create longer waves like Tara mentioned earlier, which we call infragravity waves. And maybe we can look at this illustration of how the wave is actually resolving and tracking individual waves. So you can see, let's maybe focus on that Opala beach at the top middle right. So you see that headland, next to that headland, the water is the shallower depth, so the waves are slowed down by this shallow reef, whereas further into that embayment, the waves can travel faster. So because of that, the crest of a wave will start turning towards the coastline. So we see this effect of bending of the waves, which is pretty much what we call refraction. So it's just illustration of one of the processes that is kind of easy to see from just a time lapse of the free surface that we get from the model. But of course, we have other outputs from the model. We have the velocity in the v directions, And we use all of these, the free surface, velocity in U and velocity in V, to produce what becomes the run-up that we report on our forecast. Yeah, so that's it.
Sorry, my audio just disconnected. I'm having some technical difficulties over here. Thanks, Asaf. I'm going to assume you finished answering the question. All right. Is there anyone that would like to unmute and ask a question? I don't think we have any in the chat at the moment. Otherwise, we'll continue down with the.
I didn't see any questions in the chat, but we're happy to put folks on the spot, like Melissa said.
See
Donna?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Donna.
Hi. I don't really have a question. I just wanted to say hi to all of you guys. So sorry, but it's really good to see you and see what you're doing. And also I was wondering, you said you still need pictures, and I had been so busy during the school year trying to teach online, but now I have the summer off. So is there a certain kind of way you would like the pictures to be taken, like from a certain angle or something that helps?
Great question. Who would like to take that? Doug?
Yeah. Hi, Donna. It's good to see you.
Hi.
It's been a while.
Hi, Doug.
Yeah, the ideal situation is that you'd use the forecast to determine at what time the highest run-up might be expected for a particular event, and then you go down and take a picture of the run-up at the highest point that it reaches. So we're looking for pictures of the beach, probably along the beach, showing some, or wherever you are, it doesn't have to be a beach setting, showing how the water has reached to its highest level. So if you can't make it right at high tide or right at the highest forecast moment, usually pictures within an hour or two afterwards are also really good, because the sand gets wet, or the soil gets wet, and you can see where it went to, and that's very valuable as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so kind of a side view then is the best.
Yeah. Of course, if there's erosion, if you got find a place where there's just the water just all got really muddy from the waves digging into the alluvial soil, that's a useful picture as well, to see the plume going away from the beach.
Okay. Thanks. And anyways, I'm really glad you guys are doing this. It's really great. And as I think Tara, I can't remember if Tara or Melissa said at the beginning, that I do use these things sometimes when we have really high tides to time when I drive to the other side of the island, because I really don't like driving through that water.
Yeah.
Not to mention the traffic backups.
Yeah.
One thing we'll probably do is circle back to with some of the county folks and maybe even emergency management. And I don't know, there could be the possibility of, warnings or things like that are related to the forecast. So we have more work to do on that too. Thanks, Donna, for all your contributions. Yeah. She's one of the several on the Mahalo slide that provided critical support during the field operations.
Special Mahalo.
Oh, glad to help anytime. Okay.
There is a question in the chat, Melissa. Did you find? Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Donna. Okay, so Alyssa asked a question. Alyssa, do you want to unmute and ask it, or I can read it? I'm looking at that.
Sure. Thanks, everyone. Great presentation. Appreciate all your work on West Maui. It's a popular place for projects to come up for us. My question is there a historical archive of the run-up height for each of these 12 areas? So, for example, to be able to calculate the maximum recurring run-up height on an annual basis or a 10-year basis, or with whatever data that's available. Thank you.
Great question. Who'd like to take that one?
I'll give it a shot. It's kind of a yes and a no. We keep every photograph we get. We have not done, although it's one thing we would like to do, we have not done exact measurements that are referenced to a particular benchmark of the run-up heights. We have a plan already set out. Martin put together a nice plan of doing that, but we have not been able to actually execute that plan. So we have a bunch of photographs from the community and from cameras that are on particular hotels and condominiums and so forth. But it's not, some beaches like Ka'anapali are good enough, where there's enough photographs there that we actually can have an archive where you can do what you just described. We can go back in and look at how the beach was changing over time over the past 3 or 4 years. Prior to that, the pictures we have are very episodic. I mean, before we actually started this project, we haven't gotten a lot of pictures from them. Does anybody else on the team have a better viewpoint on this than that? And we do have some locations like Ka'anapali where we have a reasonably good sequence of photographs throughout the several years we've been working on this. But that's pretty much it. Some Napili. I mean, are you looking for any particular beach?
All 12 areas. More so the data itself, like on the PacIOOS website, the forecast data, the elevation, and if it crosses the A, B, or C thresholds. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That I can answer pretty distinctly as no. It took us a while to get the forecast working right, and consequently, our history is only a couple months old now. In a couple of years, of course, we'll have that. We're saving all of those forecasts. It's on each of the web pages. You can go look at the archive and see each of the forecast that was made or sequence of them. But prior to when we finally settled on the proper methodology, which was just a couple months ago, we are not keeping that material. Well, we have it, but we're not going to loan it out to anybody because it's incorrect. It's not accurate.
Great, thank you. That'll be a great tool as you build up that data archive.
Okay, good.
Well, and there's a follow-up question to that. Okay, sorry, Melissa, I'm taking over there. I'm sorry.
You're good. Go ahead. Thought maybe Asaf might want to take the follow-up from Heidi.
Which is that, can you hindcast those events?
Yeah, absolutely. So we just need to provide the proper input to our Boussines ocean source zone model. We can choose any date in the past, yeah. And ideally, if it's an interesting event, that was some particular interesting response somewhere along the coastline, that makes sense to run something on a hindcast mode, definitely.
Yeah.
So
and
yeah.
Heidi, do you want to unmute and add any more context to your question, or did Asaf cover it?
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that would be great. Also, like if you could hindcast in not just like one event, but if you could, is it like too much time or computation to like hindcast like everything and then have kind of like, you know, like just have all that data available?
Well, the hindcast, like if we do it in the given domains that we see here, those two domains that we are using for our forecast, and the same resolution, it takes a couple hours only to produce the simulation output. However, if we can also run it on what we call a research mode, high resolution, let's say 5 meter by 5 meter, that will take longer. It's possible. So depending on what we want to get out of the hindcast, we might decide to go one way or another. Yeah, and we can run multiple hindcasts. As I said, it's only preparing the proper input to the model. So we need specifically a directional spectra input. So a matrix of energy pretty much in different directions and frequency, which we get from the previous model in that chain, that's SWAN. So it needs some preparation, but it's not something that requires too much time. Yeah.
Okay, and then the one other thing I was interested in is you do have the directional data too, right? So like when you have like a product, you would have something that would have like the run up or the energy and direction too. Is that correct?
Yes, we have the free surface of the water and the velocities and in the v direction. So we can produce, like you said, yeah, products such as energy flux or just kinetic or potential energy, or like Tara mentioned earlier, hydrodynamic force or other quantities that you might think of. Yeah.
Okay, and then you're expecting to have that as like a free product that anybody could download?
We did not.
Oh.
That was. Oh.
Oh.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
No, I thought. No. Sorry.
I'm going
I
to
thought
interrupt
someone else.
for 1 second here.
Yeah.
Hold that thought, Heidi and Asaf. But I did just want to point out that it's
Sure.
5 o'clock.
Oh,
And
okay, sorry.
we want people to feel free to drop off because we don't want to consume your time. However, we are going to stay on the line and we will continue to answer these questions. There's another question from Helen that came in. So thank you again all for being here. And we'll continue to be in touch. So
Yeah.
back to Heidi's question. Asaf.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Yes, Heidi. So we're not planning to produce directionality information that goes along with the run-up forecast. However, for the future scenarios, this is something that will be incorporated into our product. So as Tara mentioned, we will probably generate products such as maps of hydrodynamic force and energy flux. So that will provide additional input for certain people that are interested, like as policymakers or homeowners, or certain people that are interested in that kind of information to make certain decisions. But for the run-up forecast, we're not planning to display that kind of information, the directionality.
Let me jump in here and add, we're always looking for applications. We're always looking to see how we can serve the community and provide products that are useful in one sense or another to the people in the community, whether it be planners or engineering or just beachgoers. And so if you can send us what your interests are, send us emails about what your interests are and what kind of things you would like to see. We might be able to roll that into what we're doing now, or we can start a dialogue with you to let you know, what it would take to move forward in the direction that you're interested in. So let's, just keep that open. At the moment, we're not planning to do a lot of extra computations that include energy flux and hydrodynamic force and some of these other quantities, because it's time consuming and it takes up resources. But with a good enough region, we can move in different directions and we can make some changes. So just let us know what you're interested in and why.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. And I think kind of building on that, getting to Helen's question about whether this tool will be provided as an app that the public can access freely on their smartphone. So Helen, our website is mobile friendly, but if you had if you want to unmute and give some more context and any ideas that you have on how this might be presented in a more mobile friendly manner, we'd be interested in hearing that either now or in the future. And if not, that's okay too. Did anyone want to add anything to that, to Helen's question in the chat? Okay. Oh, Fiona, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I've added the email address for folks to email us if you have any additional thoughts. Okay, so Helen says she's not able to unmute, but thank you for the response. Great. And Helen, again, like if you have additional thoughts or ideas, we're definitely welcoming any feedback, and you can email us at info@pacios.org. It's landing in my inbox, so I promise we will get back to you.
Yeah, it's much safer going to Fiona's inbox than mine. All right, I see Alyssa has another question coming in. Alyssa, do you want to unmute and ask it?
Sure, I just had a suggestion for future work. At DOH, when they have brownwater advisories at different parts around the islands, they'll send out an email alert if you sign up for it, so that you know at a certain beach that there's an advisory. And it also tells you when it's gone away. So something that might be helpful is if there is a predicted run up that's going to cross one of the thresholds, letting people know so that they can prepare for it or go out and take pictures, or in my case, do field work, or just advise clients on getting out there to document damage that might occur. That would be something that would be helpful to me, so I don't have to check all 12 areas all the time.
That's a great point. And I'm going to toss that one to Martin for a response, our notification system.
We have a fantastic back-end system already set up, raring, ready to go, but it has a few software wires that still need me to connect. We have an informal system for all of our other products already, and we're going to convert that to a more robust system as well. So yeah, you will in the very near future be able to just sign in and select whatever region and threshold you'd like to get a notification for if the prediction exceeds that.
Perfect, thank you.
You read our mind, Alyssa, so stay tuned.
And Fiona even made a really nice color scheme that matches PacIOOS for it too. So.
We have all your email addresses since you registered for this webinar, so we will reach out again when that is ready to go.
Okay, so we could move on to another question from the poll, or if anyone else has anything else they want to ask, feel free. Okay, maybe we'll jump to one more question from the poll. Which wave conditions impact West Maui the most? Martin, I think you're signed up for that one. Slide 16.
Slide 16. So this is another question that has kind of a lot of different answers, but the biggest answer is large swell from the north or south during a period of high sea level. So putting those two conditions together leads to the greatest impact in the region. And by that I mean not storm driven stuff or other things. This is the extra local forced waves and the high sea level due to sea level rise, background eddies, anomalous conditions for the year. So that's the conditions that will impact in the future as well. And then a lot of people were asking, and we kind of did ASAF did a really nice job looking at all of the wave events that have happened over kind of the recent decades. And we had this question a lot. And even on the North Shore here in Oahu, I had this question during the Sunset Erosion event, Sunset Beach Erosion event. They were like, well, it was because the swell came from a specific direction. And a lot of people in West Maui want to know like that direction too. So we've kind of blocked out that admittance window there for what directions will be the most impactful. You get a good shielding from Molokai, when you have the standard swell of 327 or whatever, which produces the eddies and the pipeline goes off. And then once it gets to about 345, then you start to see a lot of that swell being able to refract into the West Maui coastline. And some of the most kind of strangely destructive waves occurred during high sea level events, and they weren't particularly the largest swells of the winter, but they came in at 0 or 5 degrees. So those are the things that are the most impactful conditions. I put this nice picture in on the side. This is from over 100 years ago, and you can see that's the Olowalu beach, and there's an actual beach berm there, which is really cool. So now the highway would be just a few feet in front of where he's standing, and there wouldn't be this natural berm, and it slopes off into a rocky section there. So we were really interested in coastline change over a period of time too. So if anyone has like these ancient pictures, I'm super into those. So the south gets impacted as well. So over the long period of time now, the south has been starting to get impacted the same way, high sea level and large swells.
Thanks, Martin. Maybe we'll do one more question from the poll. Doug, what's the difference between the winter and summer months? So it's building on what Martin just was talking about. You're on mute, Doug.
I was trying to tell a joke and now I blew it. Anyway, the reason I'm here in Hawaii is there's not much difference between winter and summer. No, the winter's obvious, or the differences are obvious, of course. We have our largest waves hitting the islands in the wintertime because the storms are closer than the waves that come in from storms in the southern hemisphere. They have to travel a lot farther and they lose a lot more of their energy. So on average, the biggest events come in the wintertime from the north. Asaf did a really nice study, as Martin was mentioning, of events, the wave events that have occurred in the last 30, 40 years. And the interesting part of that to me was that if you look at the strongest wave events, maybe the top 10 from the south, they were all associated with passing hurricanes that had started off in the Eastern Pacific and had just gone straight west and hadn't actually interacted with the islands, but had sent swells to the islands from the south. Now, that then means that's a summertime thing. The hurricanes are strongest in the summertime. So we do get strong swells from the south, but those are mostly from the hurricanes as opposed to being from southern hemisphere storms. Sand is another issue. The sand movement is seasonal, as we go back to studies by Chip Fletcher and Sean Batusik years ago, and several others, showing the sand movement along. Well, actually, we've got Heidi here and Alyssa. Did you may have done, as I recall, you did some work on this too. Anyway, the sand moves around seasonally as well. Kaanapali Beach is the best example. Sand moves south to Kaanapali Point in the wintertime, and then it moves back in the summertime. And that affects the impact between winter and summer along that beach. I think those are the main issues for the seasonal differences.
Thanks, Doug. And maybe really quickly, or we'll see how quickly you can do it. Since you mentioned hurricanes, why should this forecast not be used during a hurricane or tsunami?
Good question. So if hurricanes are not in the islands, so the outer arms, the outer wind bands are not in the islands, the waves that are created by the hurricanes actually are in our forecast. The winds are part of the local Wove model and the global wind models. And so we actually do see those waves from those hurricanes that are not close. However, when the hurricane gets into the islands, there are two phenomena that occur because of the hurricane, which we don't have any explanation for. Well, I shouldn't say explanation. We do not take account of. Two phenomena we don't model. The first is that the hurricane center itself is associated with very low pressure. Low air pressure means that actually the sea level is being sucked up a certain amount, and it can be a lot. It can be feet being pulled upward because of this low air pressure. And the second phenomenon is the wind is directly moving the surface water. Yes, it creates waves, But in addition, it's actually pushing the surface water ahead of it. And when those strong winds are are interacting with the islands, they actually put an additional sea level rise on the coastline because of the wind. So those are the two things that we do not take account of when we're dealing with hurricanes, when a hurricane is within the islands itself. So that's why you should not pay any attention to our forecasts when a hurricane is going to get that close. Tsunamis, completely different process for creating a wave on the ocean. It's an earthquake on the seafloor, moves the seafloor, generating a very long period gravity wave, just like our swell, but it's at a very long period. And our model has no chance of modeling that. It's not part of the input that forces our local nearshore BOSZ model that Asaf was describing. So when there's a tsunami, our forecast has absolutely no applicability at all. The end.
Thanks, Doug. All right, unless there are any other burning questions, anyone would like to quickly type in the chat or unmute and ask, I think we'll wrap it up. Okay, seeing none, I'll turn it over to Tara to close.
That's it. I don't have anything else to add. Thanks again, everyone, for participating, and we'll stay in touch, like we said before. Thank you very much.